There's Judy.
Hi.
Hi,
Sorry
Jen.
about the
John.
confusion.
Oh, John. We gotta get you on your modifiers. And then, or, and.
I've gone ahead and started the live stream, President Everett, so whenever you're ready, it's ready.
Okay, I'll call us into order at 1:39. Everybody, welcome. And I guess at this point, I'll simply hand the gavel to John Benton. I believe you're president of the Budget Committee, aren't you?
Well, unless you want to object somehow or another, it'd be fine with me.
So I think the course of action here is
Elect somebody.
the election of the, officers, and usually it's the budget committee needs to determine who they want to be president and secretary. There's two positions, so what say ye?
I think John does a good job. I think that's fine. Got
So
somebody
John,
else?
you're seeking nominations for president.
Yes, okay, in that case, I have a nomination for John Benton from Judy and Svea. If I understood your hand wave correctly, you second?
I
Okay,
nominate
then
John
moved and
Benton.
seconded for John Benton as president of the Budget Committee. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
All right. So secretary, someone has to be secretary, and then you can pass the baton to staff if you like, but someone needs to
And what does secretary do?
pass the
Jimmy can be
baton.
secretary. We did that last time. didn't we?
Yeah,
That's good.
so when you need.
I would move to have Judy be secretary of this session.
So John Ben made a motion to have Judy as secretary.
Okay, can I get a second? Again, Svea Truax seconds the motion. Have moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
I guess we'll go.
They said aye. All right.
Okay, then Judy is the secretary. John Benton is the president. And at this point, I'll hand the gavel to John Benton.
Just say aye.
Okay, but I would like to pass it to staff.
So John, Judy made a point that she would like to pass the secretarial minute writing duties to staff.
All right,
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you very much.
Okay,
okay. So then,
so John, you will start to say.
Remember correctly, I think we have a budget message that comes up,
That's right.
and Michael does that. And there's a big chunk of it right here, I think.
Yes.
So you may proceed if you'd like to, Mr. McElroy.
Did you hear that, Michael?
I did not hear that, sorry.
So John Ben said, you are welcome to start your budget message.
Okay. Thank you, President Benton. First of all, on behalf of staff, and I know the commission, thanks to everyone for participating in this budget committee meeting. Like any other public agency in the state, we're about a quarter of our year is involved in budget preparation, and this committee, in which you are, as budget committee members, you have equal standing to an elected commissioner. It's an important step in making sure that this budget is on the right track, has specific input and discussion before it moves on. This is, as the first part of my budget message describes, is part of this process that really starts in January and sometimes in December. So it's a continuing of specific steps. This proposed budget is being presented here and for discussion, and then we would seek your approval of the budget, whatever changes that you recommend and agree to, and also approval of the tax rate for the next fiscal year. Once this moves on from this committee's work, then it goes to a public hearing. It is at that point the approved budget, and then once approved again by the commission in June, and then it's the adopted budget. And of course, we're on a fiscal year here from July 1st to June 30th. So starting July 1st, that's when this new budget will take effect. I don't want to go through all the items in this budget report. I want to give you a summary of it. But as Fred has described this, and Ken again, there are three general basic funds that the report as part of our budget makeup, the general fund, the revenue fund, and the bridge repair and replacement fund. So that's how we divide up our budget. The bridge repair and replacement fund is where funds from portions of the various toll increases over the years are flow into, and those are the largest part of our budget. Really relates to not only staffing and capital projects, but the bridge. And here, as we'll talk about, it includes not only this really significant bridge replacement efforts underway, but also the continuing imperative that the port maintain the current bridge so it's safe and operational, so that we aren't caught with a long time frame for a bridge replacement and a short time frame where we have a bridge that is inoperable. The port follows pretty detailed financial policies, as you would expect. The three most critical ones are noted in the budget officer message. We reserve and maintain at minimum of 10% of our net depreciable assets. We're significantly over that, but that's a bottom line that we don't want to go below. And our debt service coverage ratio at 2 times. And then there's a note that generally speaking, in terms of our investments, we follow a cash-on-cash return model. So for the budget highlights, this is a chance in this budget message to look back and to look forward. And looking back, we're looking back on a really significant year of uncertainty and challenge related to not only tolling operations, the reduction in bridge traffic and therefore bridge revenue, also the really significant pressures and uncertainty about the waterfront management, waterfront operations. If you go back 1 year, we were really in the middle of the COVID pandemic. It's ramping up. And that budget was prepared, generally speaking, with as much anticipation as we could about the impacts of COVID, but also generally structured as a typical year with the caveat that we were going to watch capital expenditures very closely, and we were going to anticipate responding quickly if events required. Of course, the largest impact to our revenue would not only be the bridge, and I'm going back a year, but also to the tenants that are in port-owned businesses, buildings. And at that point, there was just a lot of uncertainty about those two on the revenue side. And on the cost side, it really related to how we could manage the waterfront, which involves restrooms and trash pickup, and and not only that, but our port office operation. Where we are now is, and again, looking back, we can see that there was a lot of uncertainty. We did have a pretty significant decrease in tolling revenue, especially when the toll booth was shut down for 6 weeks. And then we went to all electronic tolling for a month after that. Really significant drop off in revenue. And then once the toll booth was operational again, we still had a significant decrease in bridge traffic, although that has come back a lot. On the plus side, well, and we did see the commission did approve a policy whereby we would defer rent payments for tenants if they needed to get through the worst of the pandemic. And that resulted, of course, a decrease in the lease revenue. But on the plus side, we have been quite successful in obtaining grants and subsidies from various sources through various COVID relief acts and legislation that's occurred. So there was reimbursement for some of the direct costs that we incurred to respond to COVID. And then importantly, there was a very significant, almost $500,000 worth of relief or reimbursement for the loss of toll revenue that came from the COVID relief legislation that was embedded in the omnibus bill from the federal government last fall. So net, and Fred will describe it better than I can, we are in in pretty good shape. We made it through most of the pandemic. There's a lot of uncertainty looking ahead. But based on the COVID relief funds that came in or are committed to come in, we've come through this financially in quite good shape. I should note that the port office is still closed, and the waterfront, by and large, is still, I guess, in terms of facilities to the public, is essentially mostly shut down. We still don't have trash pickup other than dumpsters, and we still don't have the restroom blocks that are open. So looking ahead, I think there's more certainty, or at least a lot less uncertainty as we plan for the next fiscal year budget. And that gives us some comfort. So unless there are questions, and I would suggest that you offer up any questions as you have them as I go along. I'll just go through the asset areas. You have the report, and I will just highlight some aspects of it that are of particular importance. Remarkably, I think in our industrial properties, our vacancy rate still is quite low. Our occupancy rate is quite high. And that's fairly remarkable. I think the Commission's actions to allow for rent deferment was very, very important for some tenants. And then interestingly, other tenants actually benefited from the pandemic, that their business was equal or better than it had been before. It's always important to make sure that our portfolio, which comprises about 220,000 square feet, is maintained well, and we're anticipating capital maintenance projects. This last year, a very significant capital project was done on the Big 7 building, the roof replacement. But then we also deferred some capital projects. We had an improvement project within the port office that has been deferred. That's been pushed forward into next fiscal year, and some other smaller projects. I mentioned the Lower Mill. That's the Lower Mill industrial area. That's been now basically the infrastructure there is mostly complete. There is one last step. There's about a 5-acre parcel that still has a remnant wetland on it. We have a CORDSL permit for that to fill that project. And in addition, we still have reserved funding in the next year budget to allow for the further feasibility analysis and potential initiation of construction of a light industrial building there. And there's $1.5 million that's reserved for that. I will say as an aside that we had anticipated some land sales up there in this current year budget. Those, I think in large part because of the pandemic, did not pan out. And what we have done in the short term is leased the majority of those properties up there to businesses that need short-term uses. So there's a timber company that has a temporary scaling operation there. We have another company that set up essentially a temporary batch plant. And then most recently, a short-term lease with Cardinal Glass for another lot for a construction laydown yard. So there is some revenue coming in on those properties, but it's in the form of short-term leases. Lot 1 is one that we always talk about every year. Long story short, there is that we did have a preliminary subdivision plan, but it would have required a commitment to a very significant capital investment in infrastructure within a 5-year period, and that did not seem that was something that we could assume as an obligation. Instead, though, we are focused on trying to get one piece of that infrastructure plan in place, and that is the extension of Anchor Way, which cuts across east-west in the middle of Lot 1. That's about $1.5 million project, and we're seeking several grant opportunities. ODOT's infrastructure opportunity or Opportunity Grant Program and also the Economic Development Administration. There's also some opportunities that are coming through the state government. So the hope there is that we can continue that effort and look to construction of that in fiscal 22 or 23. I sort of passed over it, but there is the commission a couple of years ago approved what we call the development strategy, where we're trying to look at the port's portfolio and we identified those projects that have the most potential, the most immediate potential for development. And part of the objective there is to identify opportunities that can, over time, increase the net revenue to the port. And that is part of a larger effort as we all look ahead to the possibility, maybe the likelihood, that the bridge will be replaced in 7 or 8 years. The port has to anticipate how to increase its net revenues and then likely seek ways to decrease its net costs in order to compensate for the significant loss or lack of revenue that would be coming off the bridge if a new one was built. So we have several years to look ahead to that and anticipate how the port will function and how it will, what it can carry out with a bridge replaced. And one way we can do that is try to build our revenues off of our industrial properties. The bridge is always a big focus. We've described it, but for the budget committee members, the tension there exists is that we don't want to spend too much money on the existing bridge if there's going to be a replacement. Yet we have to be smart and thoughtful about what we need to invest in the current bridge to keep it safe and operational. And so, although some things can be deferred until there's more certainty about bridge replacement, there are other capital projects that really need to be done. And the two that are right in front of us, the first is the fact that the bridge weight limit was reduced from 80,000 pounds to 64,000 pounds. And that has a significant impact on some important businesses that operate on both sides of the river, whether it's fruit or timber, logs, gravel, chips. That rate reduction really does have a big impact. So the commission has approved a contract with a structural engineer, bridge engineer, to look at the ways in which that limit might be raised back up to 80,000 pounds, which will likely require several structural reinforcement steps to the bridge, particularly on the north ramp. And that, once we have more information about the cost and the benefit, certainly on the cost side, the commission will need to make a decision about whether to move forward. But this budget does anticipate some significant capital spending for that, reserves it in the likelihood that we can do something about the current bridge to upgrade it and get it back to that 80,000 pound limit. And then the second big one was we identified a high salt content in the concrete approach ramps, and that, especially on the north side, and that really needs to be done. And what needs to be done there is a new topping course with a waterproof membrane to keep the water from continuing to infiltrate the concrete, and it pushes down that salt content closer to the rebar that's in the concrete. So those are the two primary capital projects on the bridge, aside from some continuing upgrades to the tolling system, particularly the back of house side of things. One good news we believe to be good news is that the inspections of the bridge were just completed last week. Although there was one issue pointed out or finding related to one of the ropes, the lift span ropes, It appears as though that testing, which was very significant, included non-destructive testing of the trunnion shafts and such, and that did not reveal any major capital repairs or projects. The replacement effort is quite significant, moving ahead very well. And as pointed out in the message, we were successful with a $5 million build grant, and it appears that another $5 million is embedded in the state of Washington transportation budget for this coming fiscal year. So combined, that equates to a fairly certain $10 million. And in addition, we're still working hard to try to obtain another $5 million from the state of Oregon. So it appears pretty certain that there will be an initial $10 million to keep that effort going, and potentially another $15 million. So what this proposed budget includes tries to anticipate when those agreements are in place, how much money out of those sources might be spent in the next fiscal year. And there's we're trying to anticipate that, and it's embedded in the proposed budget. I talked about the tolling operation already. Fred is sort of a master at projecting what our traffic volumes will be, and he's been pretty close to the mark for several years now. So as you would expect, we have to anticipate traffic in the next over the next course of the next fiscal year, and therefore what net revenue come in off bridge tolls. I will add, though, that we do have in our proposed budget a toll increase, which the last one I believe was in 2017-18, but this would include a modest toll increase in the breeze-by amount, and then another quarter to the cash rate to $1.25. Whenever there's a toll increase, that requires we go through an extensive public outreach effort and a public input, and that takes time. That toll increase, if approved, would not go into effect until early January of 22. And then I've added that we continue to provide back-of-house services to the Port of Cascade Locks, and that's added about $78,000 to our gross revenue. On the recreation and marina, lots of small capital projects, several were deferred, but we did carry out a number of the small but important ones. A new ADA ramp at the marina restroom was one, and then there were repairs to the event site dock as well. Big one, this potentially big one this coming fiscal year, we have put in a grant request to repair the approach ramps on either side of the marina launch, and that when you do both sides, it's a pretty significant capital project, so that we're hoping for $130,000 or so from the state of Oregon for that. And then I'd point out that we do anticipate a CPI increase for marina tenants, and that's frankly a bit of a relief because we've had 6% annual increases for several years. And at the airport, I just want to point out how much activity occurred up there over the last year and a half, call it 2 years. Not only the lengthy permitting side, but there was a Connect Oregon 6 grant, and there was an FAA grant, and that's effectively combined to create an expansion and a renovation of the north ramp, along with the construction of a very, very significant compensatory wetland that's just to the east of that paved area. That was a lot of work and frankly a lot of risk, and it was carried out quite successfully and well. We don't see the same thing, the same level of capital improvements up there or projects, at least in terms of the infrastructure, but the commission has approved and a contract with an architect, and we are preparing plans and specs for the possibility of a new commercial hangar up there that would be focused on aviation-related technology companies, of which there is some demand. That would be, if approved, a pretty significant capital investment for the port and would require debt financing, a combination of debt financing and use of some of our reserve funds to carry that out. And we are seeking some state assistance for that project to get it done. Point out that we've been engaged with a community group and community members about the noise issue that's occurred at the airport, and in the budget there's a placeholder for $60,000 to acquire technology to be able to track the uses activity at the airfield to help address that noise issue. Talk about T-hangar lease rates going up 6%. And in terms of administration, we're always concerned about the medical insurance costs. Staffing and capital are the biggest part of our budget. So we are anticipating a fiscal or a CPI increase, which is frankly fairly modest for now. And we are anticipating about a 7% increase in medical insurance rates. I will add too that for a variety of reasons, we're anticipating some new positions at the port and some increase in responsibilities to other positions. This would be, I think, the most significant and important modification to our staffing structure in quite a long time. It would include the naming of a deputy executive director, the addition of a person who's devoted significantly to filing and project administration to support capital projects and record keeping, and then the addition of a new staff person in the facilities department. There's just so much to stay on top of here, and what I anticipate doing, I need to meet with the personnel committee, but anticipate modifying the job description of the facilities manager to be a more singular focus for construction projects and construction administration. And that in part, plus the enormous need we have for maintenance, particularly the waterfront, is, I believe, warrants a new position in facilities. So that represents about $100,000 increase in the total staff expenditures that are intended to address the things I mentioned, plus also to anticipate the possibility, maybe likelihood, that there will be several retirements in the next 3 to 5 years, and we need to anticipate how to prepare the port for those transitions and have the capabilities on staff to continue the port moving forward during a transition time, a search time, or to have people in positions that can step into those other leadership roles if needed. So that's the summary of my report. I think I'd reiterate a lot of COVID uncertainty we worked through. There's still some more to go, especially related to how we're going to manage the waterfront here as the summer begins and into summer of this year. We have a significant capital investment, 2 projects on the bridge, significant emphasis or possibility of emphasis on the commercial hangar at the airport. And then the staffing issue that I mentioned. Those have 3 areas of the budget that I think are important for the budget committee to be aware of. And I think I just add that the budget that's been proposed and that you will consider does not mean that that money will be spent on every project, on every line item. The budget is a template, it's a roadmap, it reflects the policies of the commission, the priorities of the commission as staff interprets it and based on our spring planning meeting. But most of these actions that are anticipated in the budget still need specific commission approval for a contract or an expenditure. And they are subject to public input, and we always seek and value any public input on any of these. So the budget is not, it doesn't mean that it'll actually happen this way. There still is a decision-making process that takes place with the commission. So with that, I will pause and ask if are there any questions about what I've said or the budget officer message.
Michael, this is Ben. I have a quick question just for clarification. On the budget item you mentioned for noise tracking something out of the airport, I remember that conversation. It sounded like you said $60,000 in our conversation, and board meeting was $6,000 or 75% of the cost, whichever is less. Did I just hear you incorrectly?
No, there's two separate things there. The action that was the 6,000 cap was related to the tow plane for the Hood River soaring. What is in the proposed budget is a line item of $60,000, 60, which would allow for the acquisition of technology that could track the landings and takeoffs at the airport, and also acquire the N number information for planes to be able to understand better who's using the airport and try to identify more closely if there are particular planes that are causing an inordinate noise issue.
Gotcha. Thanks for the clarification.
I have a question, Judy.
Okay.
On the $6,000, which was for the tow plane, for a prop for the tow plane, is that something that got approved or we were thinking about doing? Just to let you know, the tow plane is down right now. They're gonna have to rebuild the engine. It's gonna take probably 3 to 4 months. So that particular airplane is down for a little while. They are quickly looking for something else to tow with for the summer. Whether it's gonna be the same kind of horsepower, I don't know. But just as a thought process, because if this engine gets changed, I didn't know if we were into buying a prop or thinking about it, because things could change yet.
Yeah, I think I heard most of that, Judy. That decision, the commission did make that decision last month to help with the acquisition of a wood laminated prop. As I understand it, might take 2 months to have that manufactured in Germany and then shipped back. I was not aware the tow plane was down though.
Yeah, so they made some metal on the tow plane. Tow plane shut down right now, and they're not sure what they're gonna do. You know, this tow plane is fine right now. This one is not near as loud as the other one used to be. You know, this is not the same one that was there most of last year. I mean, I live off the end. This one's really amazingly quiet, I think. I would rev it up a little bit, but you know, I just happen to like the horsepower. But I really don't think that's a big, you know, so I don't know how much the last couple of months, has there been complaints again about the tow plane? I mean, this year it seems like it is pretty quiet. I don't know if they did something when they did their annual they're only turning up about 2,550. And I think we used to run around 2,700, so they've really backed it off. Just a question.
Thanks, Judy. Let me follow up with Mark Stanfield and Corey Riesler, and I'll
Okay.
try to get a better idea of that. Maybe something has changed that's different than when
Yeah.
we went to the commission. Thank you. Any other questions? Becca?
So I apologize, I'm a little bit in the weeds, and this might not be the time to answer this. It might come, get answered as we go through the process. So when you talked about the significant impact with the weight reduction, I don't feel like I understand what that means. So any specificity you have on that at some point would be great. Like, is it, 10 SDS trucks can't cross, or is it hundreds, right? Like, I don't know what that means in terms of how big a deal that is. And then the other piece was, I feel like I need a little bit of a 101 on the levy piece, whether that's term limited, goes away on that 83,000 at some point. I just don't quite understand how that works.
You mean,
Doesn't work out.
on the second point, do you mean the tax rate, the tax levy?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Fred can talk about that a little bit more. On the weight limit, the quick answer there is that it affects certain businesses, Hood River Sand and Gravel, for example, STS Lumber, Mount Adams Fruit. There's various JIPO loggers that transport logs across the bridge. So if you go from 80,000 pounds to 64,000, it means that those commodities, they can't haul it at their full weight. And so they would have to decide whether to haul light or haul heavy and go around the long way. So it can have a significant impact on their price point for product delivery and their business. It doesn't seem like a lot, but 80,000 to 64,000 pounds makes a big difference on some haulers.
Where I was going with it, which is kind of a crazy idea, but like if we knew exactly what the impact was from these limited companies, are we better to just sort of pay them off to go around because we save money that way? Like here, sand and gravel, instead of fixing it. I'm not pushing for that. I'm just sort of trying to think about the numbers on it. I can't remember what the price tag was on it, but it was sort of notable. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Oh, Becca, with regard to the tax levy, yeah, every year we have to renew it. It's a specified amount that had been voted by the people for many, many decades ago. And so, yeah, and you'll get an opportunity to renew it for next year at the end of the session, so.
But it doesn't go to ballot or anything. It's just,
No.
it just stays on forever.
Yep, correct,
We, the public, pay it. Yeah.
correct,
Unless we all said, no, thanks, right?
correct, correct.
Yeah.
I would just add, Becca, that that tax levy rate for the Port of Hood River is either the lowest or second lowest in the state of Oregon among all ports. It's many ports in Oregon get anywhere from 40 to 60% of their total revenue is from their tax base. So it's an unusually low and modest rate.
And we can't ask the people to vote for an increase. It's capped at that rate now. Is that to my understanding? Because it is less than the library district.
With regard to the rate, we can ask for a levy and increase it there, but we would run into a term, it's called compression, which I think we're okay. We probably wouldn't get compressed, but you're right. We could ask for more, but it would be more with regard to a new levy.
And also, Christy, if we cannot increase our permanent rate, this would be a special operating levy, any addition, and it has a maximum lifespan of 5 years. And the school district's been doing that for the last decade or so, and every once in a while I go back and ask for it to be reauthorized. The same thing the county just recently did. But that's temporary. The permanent rate is set now permanently, and ours is, as Michael said, it's pretty low. It's almost inconsequential, really.
So can I, on that note, David, just so I understand this doesn't go up for ballot. We have money where if we need that, you can increase that in coming years.
No, not the levy that we would be setting annually. It used to be you could increase your tax base by 6% a year in Oregon. But I think it was back in the late 90s in one of those taxpayer revolts. There was Measure 5, and this one was, gosh, I can't remember which one the number was, but it sort of froze everybody's tax levy at whatever it was at that point and set up the system that if you wanted to increase it, then you could only get a temporary up to 5-year operating.
But this is set, we can discuss it each year if we want to increase it. So
No, you just.
No, it's up or down each year. we say yes or we say no. If we say no, it doesn't really go away. It just says we're not going to collect it that year.
Right. I'm just saying, we have this every year.
Yes.
And
Yes, this
it's
comes up
not
every
up
year
for ballot in
part of the
5
budget.
years.
And it does for every school district and city and county and special district in the state of Oregon. This is the way it has to be done by the budget law in Oregon for public entities.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
I
sort
had
of
another
separate.
question when we're done with this issue. Or just comment.
Go ahead.
And I think Christy brought this up at the meeting we had last month about certain improvements. Are they going to get taken out when we replace the bridge? Which I think something we have to think about, although a comment that Michael, you just made, it sounds like at a minimum, we're 8 years out on this bridge replacement. And I'm sorry that haven't been following this as closely as I had previously planned on what's going on with the bridge replacement, but that's kind of what you mentioned earlier. Is that accurate? We're at least 8 years out.
You know, I guess I would probably amend that and say that everything broke just right. Remember, the construction period's probably 3 years. So here we are in 2021. I guess you'd say that if everything broke just right, it might be 7.
Yeah.
Possibly 6, but it would have to, everything would have to go just perfectly.
Right. So, with that in mind, it just seems that, these capital improvements that you're talking about and the weight, increasing the weight back up to what we have seems really valuable. And we're going to need this bridge during all that construction. But then like the boat launch and all that, I don't have a total accurate picture of what's going on during construction. But again, it seems like we're going to be using this stuff for a while in the near future. So that just seems reasonable to go ahead with those budgets.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think certainly the approach ramp overlay, that's really crucial. One can argue that the upgrade to the restoring the 80,000 pound limit, we'll know more when we get a better beat on what the cost is, but that arguably that could have a limited impact, meaning limited positive impact, but it's still an important one to several important businesses. So I think there's,
and I think that's important to consider that we're talking local businesses.
That's right. Yeah.
So. Yeah. That's all.
To that point, I think that the only one that I have I agree, the marina, I agree we need to look into getting that weight limit back up. The only question that I have is for some of the capital improvement projects that are slated for the port offices, do we have a clear picture of what the new bridge, the new route of the bridge is going to impact the existing port offices? And do we want to invest in that, or are we needing to think about the reconfiguration of the building to, where are we at on that?
We have a pretty good picture of the impacts. It hasn't been specifically designed or laid out, but it has, from a conceptual standpoint, we have a pretty good idea of the impacts. I would say that we are an impacted party, like the waterway, like the riparian edge, like a lot of different entities that are impacted by this. So we are subject to the same evaluation of not only impacts, but mitigation. So we are making sure that in the FEIS work will specifically say that if there are impacts, negative impacts to the port, that the project overall will need to replace or compensate the port for those impacts.
Any other questions?
I still have one more question.
All right, speak up.
Okay, when we're doing all these grants or working on getting these grants, there's a lot of work. I mean, you, the staff and everybody goes to a lot of work to go after these grants. There's a lot involved in it. once you get them, does some of that money come in can kind of help repay what was spent time-wise to get that grant? I mean, like, you know, when staff, you might have somebody really working, you guys spend a lot of time doing this, they're not easy to get. So once that grant comes in, is some of that money go toward overhead of taking care of doing this?
I can answer that. So the question is, you know, do we use our grants to basically pay for staff time and anything, any backward-looking costs? And most grants, actually, the grant will only reimburse you at the point of signing. So the signature on that grant starts that date. So usually any preparation costs and stuff like that will not be considered. However, there are exceptions, and there are grants that will look at costs, not usually our labor costs, but something you spent for a contractor or for an engineer or something, but it has to be spelled out of the grant.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, it sounds like Fred wants to talk now to me.
Do I?
Are you pretty done, Michael?
Yes, President Benton.
I had one more quick question, because I saw in here under the dues and membership section, you know, we do have earmarked or proposed the 10,000 for the Mid-Columbia Energy Council. And we just had a presentation recently by their people. And I just was noticing that in their proposed, what they're working on and working towards in the next fiscal year, really, and also projects that they worked on over the last fiscal year, the port really didn't benefit last year from the works that they were doing. And it doesn't appear that there are things in the pipeline for the next year that will benefit the port. And so I'm just wondering if this is a contribution of good faith for the future that we'll get some stuff, or I just wanted to point that out to the committee to see if maybe we should have a discussion about the amount that we earmark for that.
So here again, Commissioner Chapman, this budget puts into place items to consider. That's not to say that they'll go forward, because anything goes before the board, whether it's a contract for bridge work or the marina ramp or whatever it is, will come before the board to be considered. So, but it is there in place because it's hard to add to the budget during the year. So you put it in the budget, and then we think about it as the year goes on. Okay, so let me get started. First of all, thanks for going through this. The budget is really pretty detailed, and it's pretty detailed. So nonetheless, I thank you for doing this. I have a couple of corrections I need to state out loud, and they're in the table of contents. So if you go to the table of contents, you will see at the bottom, Judy, your term ends 2021, so June 2021, and then we can renew you. But I just want to make that correction. And then Becca, that should say 2023. Sorry. So when we're done with this budget, I'll make those corrections. So I just wanted to point that out. So what I want to do, and I might need Genevieve.
I'm in the meeting, guys.
So Genevieve, if you could, what I need to do is go to, here it is, share screen, okay. Can everyone see that?
Yes, Fred, I can.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, good. So this is page 29. So if you have a hard copy of your budget, you can go to page 29, and what's on the screen mirrors that. So what I'm going to do, we have three funds: the general fund, where the property taxes go into, the bridge repair and replacement fund, where a lot of our bridge work capital costs, and if we have any bridge debt, it goes there. And then the revenue fund, which is the primary fund for operating fund for the port. I will first talk about the the revenue fund with regard to it, but I'm going to hit the three levels of cost: personnel services, which is wages, taxes, and benefits. The next category, I'll hit materials and services. Then I'm going to hit capital outlay. So I did a little bit of the capital at the spring planning, but I want to go through the personal services first, and then I'm going to come back to revenue in the revenue fund. Then I'll go over to the general fund and the bridge repair and replacement fund. So I'm going to sort of, I'll walk you through, I'll help you by stating the page number that you can flip to, and I'll try to show that on the screen. So the first thing is personal services. So what you have here is, and in front of you is really the wages that we have for the year that are budgeted. So what I do is I take all our wages and I basically say, what's that cost of living? And the port historically has used the Bureau of Labor Statistics, Western Region, Class B/C. It used to be the Greater Portland Metropolitan, but they changed that to Western Region, Class B/C for this area. And that cost of living increase is 1.65 something, 1.65%. So it's pretty low, or I should say 0.0165. So I add that to the compensation of the employees that we do have. And then there are step increases for employees, and there's usually a 5% step increase if they meet their job requirements. And then this year is a little different with regard to wages. Michael alluded to it in his budget message that we are looking at some upgrading of classifications for 2 people here, or 2 staff positions here at the port, and then bringing on an additional staff and maintenance as well. So what you see in this first page is just that. So you have last year's budget with regard to wages, about $2,031,000. And what the impact of the cost of living will be, about $33,600. And then those compensation step increases will amount to about $39,100 if everyone meets that requirement to get a merit increase. And then additional staff, this is where we're talking about reclassing certain positions here at the port, amounting to about $20,000, and an additional maintenance staff about $57,000 as well. And so that increases our this next year's budget to about $2,180,700 that you can see, about a 7.4% increase, or $149,700. So if you just take out the additional staff and those upgrades, as if we were just going to go ahead and rebudget this year like we did last year, it'd be about 3.6%. So just giving you a feel for what that looks like on the wage side. With regard to taxes and benefits, the year that we're currently in, we have a budget of about $987,200. With regard to PERS, that's our pension plan here. All local and state governments here in the state of Oregon, or I should say most of them, are within the PERS umbrella. And so that impact of PERS is about $31,600, and that the rate did increase slightly, and I'll show it on the next page. It increased slightly for those employees that are tier 1 and tier 2. Tier 3 saw about a 12% increase. Then healthcare costs did increase. Premiums around 6.9, almost 7%, and that amounted to about $35,600. And then naturally, if your wages increase, taxes and unemployment, you have that component of about $5,100. And the additional staff position and those upgrades of the positions that we have here, that had an amount of about $38,700. So what we're looking at for this next year, as far as personal services, this is in total, not just the revenue fund, but in total, bridge repair and replacement, general fund, everything in total. about $1,098,200 for taxes and benefits, or about $111,000 more. So if you keep that in mind, I will go to the next screen and we'll sort of capsulate what this what this means in total. So what we have in the budget for last year, we had about 33.1 FTE, that's full-time equivalents. This year, next year, we're budgeting for about 34.1. Your increase in total wages and taxes and benefits is about $260,700. So you see that right here. If you can see my mouse, maybe you can, maybe you can't. And the increase is about 8.6%. So that's the impact that we're looking at. And so what happens is this total amount gets distributed to all our asset centers based on what everyone sort of works on. And if I can show you, hopefully I can. I might need Genevieve. Oh, there it is. So Genevieve, maybe you can, how do I flip to my other screen? Ah, here it is.
And you could stop your share and restart it with a different window.
Yeah, I'm trying to see where my other, okay. I'm trying to show them the allocation window.
Oh, and you can't click up on that tab there?
Yeah, hold on, let me see something if I can.
On your Foxit reader, there's a tab there.
Foxit reader?
Yeah, and it says payroll allocation there, the tab next. Let me go look. Let me see if I can.
Where are you? Yeah. Oh, there it is. I got you. Thank you. Can you guys see that?
Yes, it's a little small, but I can see it.
Oh, sorry. So, oops, it's not what I wanted. All right, we'll just try that. So this is everyone, and we distribute everyone. Maintenance gets distributed based on these asset centers across the top. And then what you see in those wages and taxes and benefits, it just gets distributed based on what everyone's makeup is for each asset center. We do this a couple times a year, asking staff, where their makeup, where do they think they're, doing most of the work. It is, it's the best we can have right here at the port. We don't have any sophisticated kind of plan, but this sort of tells you how we allocate that out. And so any questions with regard to personal services, or I'll move on to materials and services. Nope, okay. So let me do this. So we'll move on to materials and services. I do want you to keep this number in mind, 260,700. So our budget for personal services is increasing by that amount. What I'm going to do is this. Okay, sorry for doing this. So this is the materials and services just for the revenue fund. I'll do it for the general fund and for the bridge repair and replacement fund. But just to give you an idea, what we do now is we break materials and services down into utilities, maintenance, miscellaneous, professional services, legal. I'll go down through each one. But with regard to creating the budget for next year, basically, most of our properties, the bridge, our industrial commercial properties, the marina, the event site. And so basically, there's a bunch of spreadsheets that I have that rolls into this main summary sheet that you see. And if you're wanting to look at the hard copy, it is, I'm talking about page 31, 32, and 33. So with regard to utilities, I basically analyze what is there that we have today that we're using. And if there's any real discrepancies, I will make adjustments for the next budget year. Something like there's a water break, and water is going to was a lot higher this year than it will be for next year because we fixed the water break or something like that. But as you can see, for this next year, utilities is going to go down by about 2.7%. We're just seeing a little less activity there, and I'm basically chewing the budget up a little closer to the actuals that we feel that we're going to have this next year. With regard to maintenance, that actually is increasing by 2.1%. So we're basically our buildings are having more maintenance. Our staff is specifically our facility staff is really going out and really doing a lot more maintenance work. So you're seeing a little bit more of that increase occurring in the maintenance section. With regard to insurance, that basically stays about the same except for casualty. Our bridge insurance is a 3-year policy, so it's basically static for this next year. The property casualty, basically we haven't got those numbers yet, but they're saying it should be somewhere between 5 to 7%. So I put about 7% increase there. And basically that plays out to only about a 1.8% increase as you see it in total. Because there's some give and take with regard to how last year's budget is compared to this year's. So I'm really trying to make this next year budget a little tighter, actually, compared to the actuals that I'm seeing. Property taxes, about a 0.7 or about, almost a 1% increase. There again, I'm seeing, and I talked to Brian Beebe, he's over at the county. He's basically saying, yeah, you could, it's going to be about what it is last year, maybe a little bit more. And so here again, I'm trying to, in this next year's budget, as you can see, 514 to 211 versus 213. Basically, I'm trying to keep our actuals pretty close and true up our budget a little tighter. So this budget is a much tighter budget than it was compared to last year. I think as we progress through this next year, it's going to show. It's going to be very close. Our actuals will get closer to our budget. Miscellaneous, there is some increases in miscellaneous. A lot of it, I'm budgeting. In this current year, we're seeing quite a bit of costs related to porta potties. Although we're going to open up the event site and the surrounding recreation areas, I put in the porta potties just in case. So I beefed up that budget a little bit with regard to porta potties and those specific areas, event site, Marina Park, Hookston. Also, I put in for the bridge, put a little bit more emphasis on that LPR stands for license plate recognition. So we have quite a few supplies with regard to that. And so it actually hits several areas. It hits postage, it hits our machines or copier machines, stuff like that. So I beefed up that a little bit. So that's why you see for miscellaneous, a little bit higher increase of about 5.1%. Legal fees, I basically kept it the same as last year. Although, I feel that although there might have been in the previous year an increase that had to do with that specific year, and I think we have enough bandwidth within the current budget that we have. So I'm moving that forward as is into this next year. Other professional services, basically that's where we go down by about 29%. That is because last year when we were preparing the budget, we were right, it started out with the pandemic, and we also had we were also going live with the license plate recognition system at the toll booth. And so we didn't know, it was just an unknown, how much cost it was going to take to basically get charged back from Duncan Solutions. So we basically take a picture of a license plate, run the license plate through on the Oregon side with the Oregon DMV. They give us the address of the customer to imprint on the invoice and send it out. Well, if you're non-Oregon, we go to Duncan Solutions. And then there's a charge there. There's that charge, and that's where that $6 administrative fee came from. And so we didn't know how much that was going to be. So we've really tapped that down quite a bit, because now we're using the system for really true run-throughs. Instead of having no toll collectors up there, we're really just using them for run-throughs, and there are some. So we, I would say every single week we're about 100 to 150 right this time of year. It will increase quite drastically in May and June, July and August, but we're running about anywhere between 100 to 150 run-throughs a week. So that gives you an idea that that license plate recognition system is working, and we're able to go after these folks. And so, so anyways, we have a much better feel for what that cost is. So that's why that went down so much. And then the last piece is administrative and maintenance. The biggest piece, that really, I didn't increase it very much, if any at all. I'm leaving in our budget for credit card fees around 200,000. Although that's a little high, we're going to be underneath that. The unknown for me is how we move, and if we do have an increase of, let's say, a nickel or whatever for the Breeze By toll come January, and we do a cash toll increase of, let's say, a quarter, there'll be a switch, right? There'll be more customers, cash customers, moving over to Breeze By, and let's say Port of Cascade Locks does the same. So then my credit card fees, of which they pay me for that component, but the expense side here, I always try to keep enough in the credit card fees just in case that there's some push with regard to people moving from cash to Breeze By, and there's a cost with regard to using credit card. So that's where that is at. So all these items get loaded into the budget that you see on pages like 16 through 26. So you see, if you go down the expenditures, you see them all loaded, and they come from this page and they get loaded back into those cells. So any questions with regard to materials and services?
Yeah, Fred, do you track yet how much of these materials and services we recoup as additional rent?
Oh, we are. With regard to the new lease structure, we do. The old lease structure, we did not at all. But the new lease structure, we are. As far as the dollar amount,
I mean, we're transitioning to the new structure, right?
yeah, I haven't done that. I've done that more on the maintenance, but I haven't done that for miscellaneous. Yeah, so.
Okay.
But we are. The idea is this will capture it. And it's a true up. So what happens during the budget year is we sit here and, with a budgeted amount that looks back 12 months. And then come June of the year, like next month, actually, we'll start to true everything up and send an extra bill to our customers that captured all these costs, including miscellaneous, if they're under the new lease structure. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
You bet.
Fred, I just had a more general question on the Duncan Solutions. Is that working? Is that effective? Are we recouping costs from people that are running through?
Yes, we are. There. Let's see. We're. I forgot what the percentage is. I should know that. I do know that, but I just, for whatever reason, it's slipping my mind. That said, I think we have done very well with regard to recouping our costs. I want to say about 50% that we already got. I want to say that, a little over that. There is one loss factor that we never get to recoup at all, and it's when the cameras can't pick up a license plate. It's just, we don't pick it up, and it goes through, or they're from Canada and we can't go after them, or we just get a bad address. And that's also in the budget here to look at some of those as well. But yeah, it's working out very well right now.
But is it paying for it itself?
Yes, absolutely, yes. When we put that license plate recognition system in, it was about $400 some odd thousand, like $417,000. And we're already over halfway there, and we're not halfway there yet. I mean, we haven't gone our 2 years yet. We're not even gone through our 1 year yet. So we're ahead of schedule, yes.
And Fred, that's ahead of schedule on an anticipated 2-year payback.
Correct.
And we're way
Yeah.
ahead of that at less than
Yes.
1 year.
Yes. So my thinking is we'll hit that 2-year payback, and we will have paid back the cost of that license plate recognition system. Yes. So any other questions? All right. So I will go on to CIP is the next piece. And let me do this. And so if you turn to page 34 and 35. I will run down the capital improvements that we have within the budget. Here again, these numbers, they are linked to the expenditure sheets of these assets and under the line capital outlay. So that's why I won't spend a lot of time there. I'll spend it here. So I'll go through. I did a little bit of this in spring planning. So some of the stuff that is that I had in spring planning, I'm going to go pretty quick through, and some of it that has changed, I'm going to spend more time on. Big 7 building. So we have a placeholder for TI of about $20,000. We'll spend about $7,000 for a trash enclosure, and then we have about $12,000 for a fire alarm system upgrade. I did talk about that during spring planning. Nothing's changed there. I do have going on to the Maritime building, the next one down. We have a placeholder of about $20,000. That's mostly maybe for, I don't know, BTI or anything, but it is a placeholder. The waterfront infrastructure, $60,000. We're talking on the permitting and some engineering with regard to that. Michael alluded to it in his budget message. So this is that beginning of that process that's included in here. Here again, it's a budget. We would have to come forward with a contract at some point in time if the board wanted to move forward on that. Parking and striping, $9,000. And then this $330,000. I show it as debt, but this has to do more with regard to what happened with the Hood River Distiller stormwater line and what might or might not transpire out of all that. We don't know if, city will have an LID and we'll have to pay, things like that. So I have a placeholder really with regard to that as a contingency in case we do have to be a party of putting any of the storm water line in. So that's what that one is about. Halyard building, metal door replacement about 10,000. Talked about it at spring planning that needs to occur. We also have about 10,000 for the trash and the lighting for the trash enclosure. Jensen building, we have the environmental going on with regard to that storm line. That has been ongoing, and there is a component of that we do get reimbursed from insurance, not so much from grant, but from insurance. Have about 50,000. I think this is probably the last year of this cleanup effort, and we have about 25,000 we might get from insurance. Fire alarm upgrade at the Jensen building, about 14,400. We do have a prior year budget that we're moving forward. We don't think we'll get to the door replacement, and we have about 25,000 there. So it's budgeted this year. They're just moving it over to next year. We think we can get to it next year. And then the north and east side window replacement, $100,000. So they're in need of that as well. With regard to the DMV building or state office building, we have about 25,000 for painting that needs to occur there. The Marine office building, we have about a TI placeholder of about 15,000. And then we're gonna look at deck repairs and some landscaping and other work of about 18,000 there at the Marine office. Nothing new there. Nothing new here with regard to the port office. We have in the budget about 120. We're gonna move that over. We're gonna spend a little bit of it this year, but our hope is definitely use that for the reconditioning of the shop and the office, port office area. And then we have in the budget, this was in last year's or this year, that we're going to look in 2022, a charging station of about 20,000. So we're just sort of moving that budget over into next year. Hopefully we can get get that completed. Timber incubator, we have a placeholder about 10,000. And then we're looking at concrete repair and fan installation of about $15,000 there. The Wasco building, a $15,000 just placeholder, but we do have about $35,000 of electrical work that we'll be looking at in this next year. Hanel have about $25,000 there for the wetland fill permitting process. That will start, and the next year we'll do more of the actual work. Here, I say, building construction 1.5, it is more a placeholder. We know that it probably won't go forward, but when I was talking to Michael, I said everything else in the budget, I said we didn't really have a placeholder that's large enough. If something comes up during the year, like, I don't know, exit 62, I don't know, something comes up, we don't have anything in the budget to tackle that. And so what we did, we just left this here. This was in last year's budget. We probably aren't going to do it, but it could be used for the construction of Hanel, but it also could be used as a placeholder. So just a FYI, we left it in there just because we thought we really don't have anything large that if you do everything on the bridge and you do a lot of stuff at the airport, we don't have anything else that's large enough. So the airport, a lot of little things. So we have about 13,000 for hangar lights and some T-hanger small work items that we need to do there. The runway lights, about 55,000. We do need to do that. The hangar development north taxiway, this is really tied to the grant. So here we're looking at, remember the NPEs, we get about non-primary entitlement from the FAA. We get about $150,000 a year. So we're thinking of maybe doing some preliminary design, and that has to do with not the hangars, not these T-hangars or these box hangars north of the taxiway. This is the pavement going up to it. So, and the design of that pavement. So that's what that is. Whether we want to do that or not, it's up to us, but that entitlement is out there. So it's one of those that you either use it or lose it, or you push it to a year where they allow you to do that. And then we have PMP of about 35,000. That's paving, some small paving stuff. Here and at the airport is the commercial hangar that Michael talked about in his budget message, the $3.3 million, and the loan that we take out with regard to it. And that is commercial hangar development, or through a process, we still need to figure out whether it will be a hybrid, some commercial hangars, some maybe industrial property, I don't know, but it's in the budget. And then,
Fred,
yes.
if I could ask a question, do you know, is commercial hangar development FAA funding eligible? or,
I do know
Would
the
it be-
answer to that. I'm sorry,
okay,
it's no.
okay,
Definitely.
thanks. That's what I wanted to know.
So, and then the flight tracking system, we have about $60,000 there. Whether we choose that type of tracking system, we don't know for sure. We'll go through our due diligence on that, but we have it in the budget if we do select that. So going into the bridge, I talked a little bit about this. The first part of the bridge is tolling, then the next part is replacement, and then the last part is all the repair and replacement funding. So the first part, tolling. So I have to rebudget about $20,500 in this current year that we have for that ODOT interface, because ODOT isn't, they're not doing the work. So I have to wait for them to finally get to it. And I think the reason why they're delaying is because they're waiting on another department of theirs to move forward. So I'm going to go ahead and rebudget that. That's something we already have that we're just putting into this next year. This next one is 85,000. It's more of a, this one is, it's more of a placeholder item. What I don't, and what I'm, not the item itself, but the amount. Because I don't know how much the engineering and permitting will be when we look at the gangway. If you look at the breeze by sign as you come into the toll facility, it's static. It's just a static sign. And so what I'm trying to do is, what would it cost to put electronic signage that we can message, so you can switch it? If you've ever gone to the Portland PDX and you've gone to parking, came out of parking, you see that electronic signage where they can tell you which lane to go to, and they can tell you if something is occurring. That's the kind of signage, electronic signage, that we're looking at, and we would put that on the gangway. And so this is a placeholder with regard to the amount, but what we are trying to do is to look at electrifying our gangway at the toll facility. The other piece I mentioned a little bit, it's a small amount. It really has to do with multiple addresses. And so what happens is this has to work with that interface back and forth with Duncan Solutions, and getting, we get several addresses. So sometimes we don't know which one it is. So what we're trying to do with this interface is for the programming to look at the addresses coming out of these DMVs and mirroring whether or not we already have that address and it matches, or it's a new address. And then when it's a new address, what I'd like to do, instead of having is to push it into the system instead of into our customer service system. So that is what that component has to do with. The next item in tolling is negative balances. We have people that go negative, and it's okay to a certain point. But at a certain point, we do need to turn that over to collections. And that's what this process is going to do, is automate that negative balance process with collections. The next one is called Twilio, integration and case management. This really came about during the year, and it still happens now and then, but we have a phone system basically that we have to go up and we can dial in, and we have to write down all of our voice messages, and then we call them back. And so someone actually has to do that. And if you have several people, they each have to go in, and they don't know one person if there's any duplicate work, and they have to go around to make sure they're not stepping on anyone else and duplicating that work. Twilio basically is a upgrade of our phone system, basically, and you can also do it at home. You don't have to be here. That was one of the pieces that really worried us during the pandemic, is that we didn't know if office staff could get in here. Twilio allows us that capability, also allows someone in the East Wing just to take phone calls. It allows us who's on hold, what's the hold time for our customers. So if you have those customers that say, I waited 6 minutes, well, we would have that information. And it also carries their phone number. If they drop, there's something that we can see and we can call our customers back. So it's really upgrading our phone system and our case management system and our customer service, our Breeze by HeadBoss system, back office system. So that's what that amount is. The next is Convoy functionality. We do have a lot of convoys, and a convoy, the most best example is motorcycles. So we normally get, we get 5, 6, 10, 30 motorcycles or cars. And what we currently do is we have to take them one at a time. And that doesn't work because what normally happens, the guy gives a $20 bill over, it says the next 20 people are mine, and they all run through. And so guess what that license plate recognition system says? Because that toll collector can't sit there and punch 20 times, you can't do it fast enough. So they get invoices. And so what we're trying to do is create some functionality that says, okay, and the toll collector can say, 1 times 20, $20, it puts that in. And so it fools the camera and says, I'm looking for 20, class 1 or motorcycle. It tells them, okay, I'm looking for this number of people. So, and it just upgrades that section. So we're sort of making our system a little more functional. Whether or not our board wants to do that is up to them, but that is something that would help a lot of the office and toll booth out. And the last piece is about $12,000 to take all of our data, our Breeze by and our back office, and put it in the cloud. We do backups to the cloud, but this also makes that functionality in the cloud. And so if we had to go somewhere, it's fully operational. And if we go down for any catastrophic event like an earthquake, or we have a pandemic and we have to go elsewhere, we can do it. So that's what that piece of it is. Any questions on the tolling before I get into replacement?
So that works fine
Yeah.
for everything but electrical. Right?
Yeah, we have battery backup and generator backup. So the question was whether or not that works great unless you have electrical failure. But we do have battery and generator backup now. So, okay. Anyways, going on to replacement. So what we have is about $1.8 million with regard to the build grant that's in here. So we have about $1,080,000 in CIP and about no, I take it back. We have about 750. I may have the number wrong, but 750,000, I think, Kevin, for the geotech, and $1,080,000 for the rest of the CIP for the build grant that's in here. And then naturally, there's a hybrid, and if you can see my screen, of our match of about 1.1 million, and a loan for the build grant is a $5 million grant, of which we have to have a 20% match. And then the rest of it's the grant itself. The other piece, and Kevin, you can talk a little bit more about it, but what Kevin said is the Washington legislature, we were successful in, not we, but an entity in Washington that we have to work with an interlocal agreement, we'll be able to get about $5 million for the bridge. Is that correct, Kevin?
Right. The Washington State Legislature allotted $5 million for the project, and it will likely be dispersed through WashDOT and then through Klickitat County. And then I anticipate that there will be an IGA or ILA between Klickitat County and the Port of Hood River, yet those details are yet to be determined.
Okay. Thank you.
Does that grant come with a match, Kevin?
No, I would put that, it's probably going to be very similar to the House Bill 2017 money that was received to conduct the NEPA work.
And is the 1.25, Fred, is that the build grant match?
No, I took that $5 million from the state of Washington, and I figured you're only going to do about 25% of it in this next year, because it's going to take you, what, 6 months, 8, 9 months to get the agreement and stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's why I only put so much in. Yeah. So now we're getting into the existing bridge. So this is the bridge repair and replacement fund. So Michael talked about the approach ramps and the, and with regard to salt and the erosion of what that salt is doing with regard to that approach ramp, there's 450,000. We have about 45,000 for pier underwater engineering permitting in the budget, about 15,000 for pier scanning, another 15,000 for the pier cap and bearing inspection and evaluation. Have about 50,000 for miscellaneous steel repairs that just go on at the bridge. At the lift span guardrail replacement, at least start looking at what that would be, and got about 35,000 there. We're gonna analyze the rub rail replacement, and that'll be about 15,000. When I say rail replacement here, I'm talking the non-lift span component, and that's just segments where what occurs just when, you know, a truck bashes our rail. So have about 60,000 in the budget, 60,000 for welding throughout the year. For the rack pinion engineering, we have about 50,000 for this next year. And then we also have the south side lift span phase 2 rehab of about 40,000. And then Michael talked a little bit about the load posting analysis. This is where, you know, our bridge had been derated a little from 80,000 down. So we're going to look at that. That's about $250,000 budgeted there. And then we had this in last year or this current year's budget. We're moving it into next year, and that's $40,000 for this embankment sloughing on the south abutment. As you walk underneath the bridge here, you'll see where that sloughing is occurring. So we're going to try to shore that up. And then just miscellaneous repairs, I have about 60,000 in the budget there. So that's for the bridge. I'll move on unless anyone has other questions.
I got one.
I have one quick question, Fred, on all of the software programming things budgeted to better our software, our backend program. I know that before you had been shopping around to other bridges and other agencies to see, have you found any interest from any other agencies that maybe moving forward to have our software system? I just think we spend a lot of money on bettering it, and I'm just wondering if there's any interest anywhere else.
Yeah, I haven't been, it's not that I haven't been unsuccessful. I just haven't had the time to just do the work, to do the marketing piece. So that's really where it's at right now. The ones that have come to me is Clackamas County, and they're still looking at the Bull Run Bridge. So I might hit them up here, hopefully during the summer, for the Bull Run Bridge. There are others, but it's something I just need to spend some time and market our back office. I just haven't been able to get out there. So it's really on me. So.
Okay, Fred,
Yes.
one thing. Where did it come on? And you've got that load posting analysis, and then you've got and rehab. Now, is that what you expect maybe would cost to fix that? Or
So Michael, the question is on the load analysis and rehab. And so to me, that's part of it now of rehab, but maybe not all of it. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. There's engineering underway. We really need to characterize the problem better. We're likely going to conduct some live load testing to see if many of those points are already structurally sufficient to meet the ODOT standard. We think, our engineer thinks a number of them are. So this will fully characterize the problem and will identify the specific remedies and costs, but the actual work to be done would need to follow into next, fiscal 23.
yeah, the money you're spending to find out the place you don't have to spend some money. Right?
Well, the hope is
If
to
you
spend
can find-
less.
if you
The
can
hope is
find-
spend less.
okay. Thank you.
And so the rest of the CIP, we're almost done with CIP. So at the marina, we have some float repairs of about 35,000. south dock repairs is 35, and here's this 283,600 for the boat ramp repair. Michael talked about it, and our hope is that we will be able to get that grant from the OSMB of about 132,000. With regard to Marina Park, the lighting on the footbridge plus the placement of the boards, about 65,000. Marina Beach overlook signage, about 48,000. And then signage and electrical, this is not the North Beach, but this is on a trail. This is about 22,500. And we do need to replace some bollards and electrical lights on the path, about 10,000, and a picnic shelter design of about 30,000. So I think we had all these that did talk about a little bit at the spring planning, but I don't think anything is new here. The event site, we have landscaping and paving of about 25,000 at the event site. And then we also have the event site dock repairs about $45,000. So that there's nothing new there. Hook, Spit, and Nichols. Some of this, I think we have the tree replacement of about 20,000 that we budgeted for. May not take all that much, but we have that in there. 15,000 for art screen for CGOCC. We do have about 10,000 a year for grading. And then here's the new hook rigging area, $20,000. I don't know if you have a question, I'm sure Daryl can allude to it, but I'll continue down and then. If you have any questions. Yes.
That hook rigging area, we did receive word that we were successful with a $40,000 travel rigging grant, which included $30,000 for that hook rigging area. So there should be you should plus up that number and then identify an offset for grant funding. That work would likely take place in the September, October timeframe.
So 30,000 and 30,000? 30,000 for capital and 30,000 for grant?
Yeah, I put 40,000 capital with the 30,000 offset, just so that we just don't know the full cost of the project just yet.
Okay, I will. We'll do a summation at the end here. And then for administration, we have we budgeted the property management system. It isn't this year. We might get to it here in June, but I did definitely rebudgeted for it in 2022. We do need a copier, a new copier. I don't know if it'll be the full 15, might be 13 or 14, but this one that we have is beyond its useful life. It's done really well. It has over 2 million copies already done, but it's been a real good workhorse for us, but we do need to replace it. And then $9,000 for PCs and software replacement. For maintenance, we have a Kubota excavator, about 49,000. And then we've been replacing our trucks, and this is a pickup truck that we'll just replace. And I'll have the cost of that replacement there as well. So I'm open for any other capital questions before I head over to the revenue side.
Yeah, I have a question on the capital, which probably is, I know we've got the airport. Do we have, we're talking about 3,300,000 for a new hangar, commercial hangar at the airport?
Yes.
Possibility. Do we have somebody interested in that? Is there, I mean, that's a lot of money. And the airport hangars don't usually get what industrial people do.
Yes.
Just out of
So-
knowing what things are.
Yes.
And the problem that bothers me sometimes when you build a commercial hangar and you're not getting what you should think you should get, we have a tendency to want to lease it out to other people. And I think airports really need to be, at least that's the way the FAA is always been. An airport, it's got to be FAA related, or it's got to be aviation related.
Correct, aviation.
So I'm just wondering, what do we think, who's going to pay that amount of money?
So I'll take a stab at it, Mike, and then you can chime in. With regard to the commercial hangar, the board has hired a consultant to take a look at, the use of that commercial hangar, whether it should be just commercial hangars or commercial airplanes, or a hybrid of commercial airplanes or industrial-related industrial, or just all industrial related. So they hired a consultant to look at that. Did you have anything else, Michael, to add to it?
Well, I just say that we believe there's significant demand based on the feedback we've had from various local companies. It wouldn't just be for hangarage, it would also have office space for employees there. So it's light industrial or aviation related light industrial.
Right, so it's aviation related businesses, so you're talking about somebody who have a business there, it's aviation related.
You know, like a drone manufacturer or stuff like that. Yeah.
Fred,
Yes.
the one question I had, and I should probably know the answer to this, but the commission has approved a new avgas fuel tank to be located on North Ramp.
Correct.
And that's a pretty expensive project or acquisition. Can that be done this fiscal year if delivery is not until next fiscal year? And does there need to be a placeholder in the fiscal 22 budget?
Yeah, probably so. If you you have to have delivery, so it doesn't have to be in, but you definitely have to have delivery. So we should probably put that in the budget just to make sure. So I'll go through a list of these items that the budget committee can say yay or nay to.
Okay.
We'll see. So I have it down. Yeah. I think that's what, about 218,000. Is that correct?
Yeah, to make sure I put 225 down.
Okay. All right.
I have a question, Fred.
Sure.
Going back to the load posting analysis and rehab, and maybe this snuck in there somewhere and I just missed it, but so you said this 250,000 is for the analysis of what we're going to need to do the rehab to get that load back up?
Well, definitely will pinpoint if there is, yes, that would be, but it may not be all the money that we might need, but it's.
Right. Okay, that's what I was wondering. And I guess my point being here is as I look at all these numbers and all the things we're spending money on that I think all contribute to the economy of our region. But this seems important to me to get that load back up. I just feel like we should do that as soon as possible. Can we do that actually in the next year? Can we make this more of a priority and say, can we put some more money into this and maybe get that work actually done so we can get those loads back up, say for next spring?
Michael,
Is that reasonable?
I'm going to let Michael answer that because he's the bridge guy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Svea. The challenge we're facing here is that the problem has to be characterized from an engineering standpoint. And then we have to go through this, what our engineer is recommending preliminarily is this live load testing process, which is intended to demonstrate that ODOT's analysis was, because they're very, very conservative, that it was incorrect. That of the 75 points that are deficient, that 65 of them will go away with proper testing and with proper instrumentation. And then, but if that's done sufficient, then it has to go back to ODOT and they have to evaluate the findings of the live load testing and then evaluate whether they agree with it or not. And then if that's done, then you have to go through the final engineering of the two essentially plans and specs to upgrade the deficient points. And then that has to then go to bid and go to construction. So if you line all that out and if it went absolutely perfectly well, it's possible that some of that work could start before the end of this next fiscal year. But there's so many ifs about it that it's really hard to say that it actually could happen.
Sure. If it, I guess I'm just saying, and I understand this timeline here that now that you kind of walked through it again. Yeah, and I suppose if we find, wow, we can get this bridge open, I mean, we can up that as soon as possible, we could probably pull some money from somewhere to get that done.
Yeah, no, that's very, very, I think that's a good comment that I think the best case scenario was that it starts at the end of fiscal 22, let's say May, June, and then it carries into the summer so that we would be able to pull money to get it going if we broke right and it was in the spring of next year. But I just think there's very little chance that the whole project can be complete by June 30th of 22.
Yeah, I just, again, my comment was just more, if there's any way to throw a few more dollars at that to get that any sooner. Just looking at all the different things we're spending money on, which I think are all valuable. That one seems one, but I understand the timing is the timing and nothing's moving fast right now with the state. So thank you.
Are we on the low side now?
Are we on the low side? Oh,
For weight?
You mean, they moved it from 80,000 pounds to 69, is that correct?
64.
64,
So that's been done, right?
that's been done, yeah.
Okay. Well, so I'll agree, we gotta get busy and do that. That's silly as hell to hold up $100 million worth of stuff going across the bridge because of $250,000 that we might want to spend fixing it. I'm sorry, but I've hauled fruit across there for 45 years. It's been a miserable bridge the whole time, just to tell you the truth. But it really is necessary. And there's an awful lot that goes over that bridge. That's from fruit they've got loaded in trucks that are going back east. A whole ton of it doesn't just go down Highway 14. A lot of it goes down Highway 5. And they're not going to go to the Dalles and all the way around the corner back just to get to Portland if they can come across this bridge. So it gets used with trucks that want to be loaded to 80,000 pounds to go where they're going to go. And they're not going to like it for the dam not being loaded to as far as they can get loaded to take off to go south. And it's fruit from here. It's not necessarily the truck going to stay here, but it's it's a crying shame we didn't jump on that last year real hard.
Well, we're jumping on it.
That's the actual fact. I mean, I agree with that.
I mean,
John, go ahead, Christian.
Oh, I was gonna say, I fully agree with both of you. And I mean, is there ways that we can put, once we get the findings from our engineer, is there going to be ways for us to put pressure on entities to help us get this corrected? And if so, I agree with Svea that maybe we don't want to be trapped at that 250,000 if it's going to be more than that. Is there a way that we can have contingency funds or something earmarked just in case we can fast track this? Because I think that everyone in the valley and on the Washington side would really appreciate a big fast track on this.
Let me make sure I'm not wrong, because I agree with both of you as well. But in my understanding, 250 doesn't fix anything. It just characterizes what has to be fixed, if it's even possible.
I think that's roughly right. Remember, the engineering is underway right now. And just for perspective, the first engineering for subconsultant for the live load testing was $186,000. So live load testing, again, there's a cost benefit calculation there, but the live load testing is very expensive because you basically instrument different points on the bridge and then run specific loads across them. So this work, this $250,000 would intended to be get through the engineering, and there would likely not be much out of that would actually be used or could be available for construction or to fix the problem. So what I'm hearing is the need to either plus up that line item or know that we have some contingency money or something that has less priority that could be moved if this thing moved quickly enough to be able to get work done next fiscal year.
Yes.
You could take 60,000 out of that airport ID thing you got going and throw it over there.
So, so we can, I'll bring this as I have 3 items for the budget committee to think about coming into when we do a wrap up. So I will talk about that. So any other questions? And then I will move on to page 16 of the revenue fund.
I love having pages.
Okay, can everyone see that? It's revenue fund
But
resources.
did you make that, is it possible to make that slightly larger? My eyes are aging. If not, that's okay.
Is that better?
Yeah, much better. Thank you.
Okay. So, so I'm going to go over the revenue side quickly. So we start out in the budget. What do you think your ending cash position will be? The reason I think it's going to be around 9,527,000. It's a little less than last year. The reason why is if someone looks at last year or this year that we're in, I have moved money over to the bridge repair and replacement fund. And every year I do a calculation that basically says, here's all the tolls, here's all the expenses, and anything above 50 cents, then above that gets moved over. And so that's why that got adjusted a little bit downward. So it didn't leave. It's like we haven't spent it. It's just over in the bridge repair and replacement fund. And you'll see that difference over there when I get to that presentation. But here we have about $6.2 million, $6,249,000 for tolls for the bridge. It's based on the traffic, and it also is based on, I want to say about a nickel. Yeah, it is a nickel for breeze by, and about 25 cents for cash. So a class 1 vehicle would go from $2 to $2.25 cash, and a breeze by would go from $1 to $1.05. So. And basically the idea here, if the board elects to, would be, it's just a recovery of our cost of living adjustment. Basically, we have said, or prior budget committees have said, hey, you should be, increasing incrementally the toll over time. And for breeze by, it's not a big deal. It's already programmed. We just change it in one field, and you basically can start. So there's not any cost there at all. Cable crossing, those leases continue based on their agreements of 12,500. This interagency is 78,000 related to Porter Cascade locks. Can go up if we're able to get another agency, and that is a possibility. And Commissioner Chapman, I'll do my best to see that happen. And another is the other component I alluded to when we got the LPR system, the license plate recognition system. Takes a license plate. Well, there's a $6 fee. That $6 fee that we get, that's around, so that it's a low ball, 135,000, probably a little bit more than that, what we collect over a given year. So, but anyway, that's what that makes. That's where that number is coming from. The rest of these, Big 7 and Jensen, Maritime, basically, what we've done is we've taken the existing leases, and Big 7 is a good example where Big 7 has 2 types of leases. It has one tenant who is an old structure, which here's your lease, you reimburse me for taxes, you reimburse me for utilities, and then the new lease, there's a tenant in there that has just the rent and what we call additional rent. And additional rent, as Commissioner Everett was pointing to, has utilities, taxes, miscellaneous, and maintenance included. And so Big 7 has both. And so that's why you see a reduction in there. Why that number is a little lower than last year is because here I either could gross that number up for what we think someone will come in and pay for a vacant space or not. So I left it as is, waiting. I'd rather lowball it in the budget on the revenue side, and then exceed that expectation. So that's why you see those little bit of differences. with regard to the Jensen building, I mean, the Big 7 building. Jensen a little higher, that one's pretty easy. There's, they're only paying the lease and the additional rent, and you can see that difference as it plays out there. Maritime, the rest of them are the same. So they're under a new lease agreement or they're a hybrid of new and old, depending upon the number of tenants. So that's basically all I did. And I also put that cost of living adjustment in there as well. And we use the cost of living adjustment same as for wages with regard to that. And that's in the agreement, the lease agreements. And it goes for, so all of this transpires, whether you're Big 7, Maritime, Halyard, Timber Incubator, or Wasco, all that is occurring based off their contracts that they have. With regard to Hanel, I put that $1.5 million in there. It could be construction, I doubt it, more of a placeholder there. And then I have a land sale of about $734,000 there with regard to Hanel. Commercial, same thing as industrial. So we're doing the same thing. Marina office, you have both types. You have a tenant that's under the new lease structure, and then you have some other tenants under the old lease structure. So that's why you see this varying degree difference from last year to this year. There we also have some vacancies. I didn't plug in what that would be, a fictitious number. I took what we have today. Moving forward, industrial property, I don't have any finance. What I do have is O&M. We do bill out O&M that the new owners of waterfront property have. That goes out every year. And then for parking, we have about $124,000. And parking is showing a nice increase over time. So waterfront recreation, there again, I use what we have to date. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, just backing up to industrial property. We have 3 tenants now at the lower mill. Short-term land lease. Is that, do we have a revenue line item for that? There's one, the most recent one is just a short term, but the other ones are 6 months. The other ones are 2 or 3 years.
So that must have just occurred, right?
Yeah. So that's total, that might be an order of magnitude of, for 1 year, $35,000 or so.
Yeah, I'll take a look at it. No, I didn't include that, Michael. Good catch. I'll do a wrap up. I have it on my notes here.
Okay.
And then going to the waterfront recreation. Here we look at season passes where we are. Season passes this year is really doing well. Hopefully it'll continue into next year. So that's why you see an increase in season passes. And also concessions are coming back online. So we should see the waterfront recreation component do better than we did in this year that we're in. Same thing here with regard to Hook, Spit, and Nichols, really dealing with concessions and events. Marina Park, same thing. We should do a little bit better this next year, and so we budgeted for that as well. Now, this is I'll talk a little bit about the marina. Michael said what's in his budget message is a little bit different. So in the budget here, Michael, for regard to the marina, I have a little bit more than just the cost of living instead of that 1.6. I have about, I'm going to say 2.25 or something like that. So that's what's in this number. It's in the budget. We can true it up, or we can just at the end determine, and we always do in November, what that number will be. It will be an increase. It'll be a cost of living adjustment, or maybe we tweak it a little bit more than that, closer to the budget. So it's up to the board at that point, I think. The rest of the marina is the same, except where I did talk about that OSMB grant for the dock, for the ramp repairs, not the dock repairs, but the ramp repair. Airport, here we have the 6% increases in our leases there for chain hanger leases. And so the rest of it correlates to if you're on a lease, an actual lease, and it has a CPI increase or whatever, we show that as well for these hanger one and land leases. The rest of it flows through accordingly. We have the 3.3 million commercial hangar, and then 261,000 for grants. Some of that's going to be for the North Apron grant. The FAA takes a long time to close out a grant. We haven't even closed out. We just closed out a South Taxiway that many years ago. So that's why I have a little additional room with regard to that. And then for general, I have a placeholder of about 2,500. Usually we get a grant from SDAO for interns throughout the year, and then 16,000 miscellaneous. So any comment about revenue? Okay, then if you keep turning the pages, you will go into expenditures, and I'm not gonna spend a lot of time. The reason why is we've already talked about it. So we talked about where we took, remember the personal services, the first thing we talked about, and then we allocated out. So it gets distributed by asset, and that's where all these numbers derive. What you saw for the M&S, whether it's insurance or utilities, all that gets plugged into these cells down from those worksheets. So they just get linked over into this worksheet. Same thing with capital, that capital worksheet that we went over, it gets linked and thrown into this worksheet as well. So when we do that, everything gets linked down, all the way down to the bottom. So I don't really spend too much time. And then here's the transfers between the general fund and bridge repair and replacement fund. If you have any, shouldn't be any questions on expenditures, but I'll go to the general fund next.
Just ask really quick, Fred, sorry. One thing I did, this is just a process question. On our page 26, the approved and adopted on expenditures is filled in. So there's some part that's already gone through and some parts that haven't in the process. Is that right?
No, oh, I'm sorry. So approved and adopted. So the budget process, yeah, it is a process question. Staff makes a proposed budget. That's what you see. This column right now, that's in that column is called the proposed budget. And once you make your changes or you agree or disagree, it becomes the approved budget. So I make the changes that you ask for, and that next column over gets populated. And then after the budget hearing, the board then is the third column over is the adopted. So that's,
yeah, so that I'm tracking on. I understand that. What I'm saying is on page 26, you have approved and adopted filled in already. That's where I got confused.
Oh, you mean at the lower, on the very bottom?
Well, here, let me show you. It's like done. Looks like.
Oh,
it's
no,
done.
yeah, it's at the very bottom. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I just was like, oh, so some is already.
No, that's all formula driven. So whenever we populate the upper part of the worksheet, that's just all formula driven, and that populates at the bottom. That's right now, it's a bunch of formulas down. I could have cleared it out or left my formulas in there, so I just have to populate the upper part of it. Does that make sense? I'm no worksheet kind of guy, so I'm being lazy. Instead of rewriting the formula, I just and deleting it and rewriting the formula later, I just decided to leave the formula there and populate it once we're done with this meeting.
I'm not seeing where that's actually, are you talking about line 381?
So I'm talking about it's, I think I get it. I think it's just an error. So on row 366 of expenditures through 381, your columns for approved and adopted are pre-populated as though they have been approved or adopted. So I just got confused thinking like maybe expenditures have already gone through.
No.
But you're saying no, it's just a pull down. Like it could be whited out. It should be whited out.
I'm sorry. I should clear that out so you don't get confused.
All good. You know what my need is? I just white the cells and leave.
Well, yeah. So what happens is those transfers, you see, let's just look at the first one, line 3762 is transfer from the general fund. So basically, it's just pointing to that cell and bringing
Yeah.
it across.
Pulling and shows.
Yeah, it's just a
That
formula.
hasn't been adopted and approved. It's just,
Yeah.
it's just.
Yeah,
a
that's
balancing
just-
thing.
yeah.
It makes sense. Yep.
Okay. So, well, thanks for bringing it up, though. I can see where, it's a good question. Let's go to the general fund. And that is page 14 and 15. So in the general fund, I will go down through it, and then we'll go to the M&S. So in the general fund, you have a starting beginning fund balance, cash balance, 394,000. We feel like we'll make about $7,000 worth of interest. It depends on what the investment market gives us. This next number is property taxes. It's about what we'll probably receive next year is about 84,300. A grant of about 2,000. That's where we might get a grant like an SDO grant or whatever. And then here's this transfer. Basically, it's just a formula that you're seeing. The rest of the general fund is just like the rest of any other fund. You have a personal services component, commissioner salaries. We have the indirect cost of the wages and salaries from office staff, that makeup of asset centers. General fund is one of them, right? Some people would spend more time in the general fund than others. And included in here is also that new alignment of that position as well. And then we have here the interns, basically. Community service initiative, the port has always, in the last, I want to say 5 years, have hired interns, basically project oriented, and provided them some guidance, but they also provide the port with a lot of nice research at the end of the day. And then the rest of it is personal services, taxes and benefits. So it did go up, and mostly of it's due to some of this increase with regard to new positions or the upgraded positions for this next year. Materials and services. This whole section here, I'm gonna go to this next page that you should see on page 15. Let me see, page 15. Here it is. So what you have is the materials and services for the general fund. We have rent. We have about $2,500 community initiative. And then this gets linked over to that other materials and services on the general fund sheet that we were just on. Utilities, and then the rest of it supplies. Nothing really changing here so much as there's a difference in advertising and communications. So we have an additional $5,000 for Spanish translations that we're throwing in the budget this next year for a lot of our communications. So that's where that increase is occurring. Keeping our travel budget the same, we hardly tapped it this year because like everyone else, didn't go anywhere. The rest of it has to do with dues and memberships. And this is where we do have dues and membership. Commissioner Chapman, you did talk about, the Mid-Columbia Energy Council. This is the budget of all the different dues and memberships. Whether or not we budget for it doesn't mean we go before the board and get it approved. And usually anything with this dollar limit of $10,000, we do bring before the board. Some of those minor items, like whether or not we have some of the dues were part of the state purchase pricing department, which gives us great pricing on computers and vehicles, actually. So there's some memberships that we don't bring before the board, but in the case of the Energy Council, we would. So here's those dues and they roll up to 48.9, a little bit less than last year. We kept the same budget for insurance. I don't see that really changing too much at all. Professional services, a little difference here. We kept our federal affairs office the same because of all the action or possible funding that could come out of the federal level. We kept that at the same as last year, but did increase the two states between Oregon 51,000 and Washington 60,000. So there could be a difference there, or we may flip flop them, but we increased that by a little bit. And then the rest of it decreased a little bit with regard to other. We have this next year we're looking at a video production and of about 25,000 there. So overall, just an increase compared to last year's budget, about 1.6%, or $5,000. We kept the same for the audit. Audit should be about the same, even though we do have a single audit here. And I think it will come in close to that. We should be okay. And then we're keeping the same budget for miscellaneous. So overall, materials and services for the general fund went up about 1.2%. So not too bad, not too bad actually. So as you can see, there's your materials and services 554,850. We don't have any capital outlay. So any questions with regard to the general fund before I move to the bridge repair and replacement fund? Okay, so last but not least, with regard to funds, is the bridge repair and replacement fund. Let's see. There. Hopefully that helps. So here again, you see that difference, the increase in the bridge repair and replacement fund starting fund balance, that movement of money from the revenue fund to the bridge repair and replacement fund. Interest went down because we're in a lower interest environment. We do have a build grant of, a grant of $3,544,000. I believe, let me look at, I believe I had to adjust this number. Let's see. Yeah, so your number is 2,864,000, and that should be 3,544,000. I caught it's just a sale bust, and so if you write in there 3,544,000, and I'll bring that up as an item that we need to. That's more of an error. Okay, the rest of it's the same. This is the match for the build grant. So that number should be 382,900, and I have to correct that. So that number should be what you have on your sheet. So your number on your sheet is correct. The expenditures are the same, and this comes across like we talked about earlier from the personnel services. When we talked about that, the allocation for both the existing bridge and the benefits for the existing bridge, and then replacement. So that's separated on that allocation. And then here, again, this is anything above the gray line is for the existing bridge. And so materials and services is a big piece here. Here we have 50,000 for on-call, 60,000 peer evaluation. And so some of this is professional services, not capital. So 15,000 for analyzing rub rail, loop, 25 loop ropes, and electrical on call is in here. So that's existing. The replacement side is both the House Bill 2017 and the build grant, based on what, Kevin, based on your worksheet, Kevin. This is a combination of all that. So about 1,143,000 is a combination of House Bill 2017 for the EIS study and for the build grant. And then down below, we have all the bridge outlay for the existing bridge. And then we also have the 3.2 million for House Bill, or really more for the build grant, and 1.25 million for the Washington grant that is coming through the legislature. So, and then here's debt service. If we do go out with $1.1 million of debt service to do our match for the build grant, the debt service is about 78.5. So that is the revenue fund. And any questions?
I just had a comment, like legal services, 13,000. Can you get anything done for 13,000? Maybe that's a question for Anna.
Oh.
Maybe we won't need that, hopefully.
Throwing shade.
Trust all your numbers, friend.
Throwing
Happy
shade
to come to
on
meetings.
legal counsel.
Happy to come to meetings for that price.
Okay. So to wrap up, I think I had one other summary, I think. You have a summary in your worksheet. Oh God, I didn't bring it up.
What page?
And maybe, did I have it? Maybe I don't have it. No. Here it is. All right. This might be a little different than usual. So what I try to do is just place this a little bit bigger. Had to, Booker. That's about the best I can do. Without making it. So I just pulled it together, saying, this is my estimate for my revenues. And if I take out in the revenue fund what the bridge has, I get about 3.6 left. And then I get all my revenues for my industrial properties and commercial properties. Personal services, material services, that gives you an idea. So the commercial properties are a little bit underwater, or industrial properties are above water. Combined, they're above water. And then we have our piece of handle that may or may not occur. If it does, there could be some debt service related to that. So it just sort of gives you a running total of, pluses and minuses. And then, as everyone knows, our waterfront and our recreation is where we're, below, where we can't recover our costs. And this is sort of the cost that we have to try to recover before our bridge gets to the point where it's, where we don't have it. And so our marina, this is where, Michael, I was saying we probably maybe should look at an additional increase in our marina, maybe not the COLA, but a little bit. So it starts to show they're just on the edge, they're just on that edge where they just need one more big and they should be done. And then the airport naturally is main part of the airport is right here, 86,700. They're just a little bit under there. The rest of it is grant related. The airport is basically grant related. If we put this commercial hangar in, we should be able to float. We should be able to float the boat of the airport, and they should finally get to that, get very close to, break even or more. And so, as you can see, the rest of it, we get about 2.2 million of net revenues. And then if you add in bridge repair and replacement fund and the rest, we're still sitting a positive about $300,000, but we're bumping a lot of capital into our budget. Like Michael said, we're not going to spend all of this budget. A lot of it is placeholders, just in case something does happen. And you have to do that because governments cannot spend without there being an appropriation. And then as we move forward, we do bring it to the board to ask them whether or not we should even engage in the contract. So this just gives you an idea, a total picture. Anyway, so the last piece would be just to sort of finalize these deliberations and then go into action items. So I'm open for any kind of questions.
Did you have three things?
Yeah.
You had written down that we talked.
Yeah,
about?
we will. Yeah. Oh, right. So I'll go over the three things. Let me do that. Thanks. Thanks, Jim. So I will change in the capital and for the hook rigging area, change that from $20,000 to $40,000, and I will show a grant of $30,000. Number one. Number two, in capital, I will place a avgas tank at $225,000, both at the airport and in the CIP for the airport. And then the question then comes to, number three is land leases, tenant land leases at Hanel. I will input what that amount is, and I will make those changes. The third one is up to you. The rest of them are errors. I'll correct the error with regard to the bridge replacement fund. There are two errors. They're just links. I'll change those. But the one I want to talk about that you guys need to talk about is the CIP for the bridge live load or for the load analysis. Do you want to increase it from $250,000 to $500,000? That's something you'd like to do. As Michael said, we may not have enough calendar or fiscal year to get it all done, but at least it gives us more appropriation.
Fred, I wonder if it makes sense to take $250,000 from the Hanel, which is more of a contingency, and move it to the bridge. That would give us $500,000 to move forward if we can on the fixes for the weight reduction.
Everyone okay with that?
I think that sounds good.
I think that's a good way to do it. That was sort of a placeholder anyway.
Yeah.
Handle. So move it over to the bridge and be prepared to move forward with that
That's
when we know what we're looking at.
Yeah. Okay. Well, those are the changes. So,
Well, okay.
oh,
You got that 60 grand in there for some kind of a
yeah,
identification deal for the airport thing.
Yes,
there's a
how
whole bunch-
important is that?
There's a whole bunch of reasons why that probably isn't the port's business to fool with to begin with, but I just think you ought to not carve that darn thing in stone. You can have it in there as what you call one of your placeholders, but I don't like the idea, and I don't think the court really needs to do that. The question I got seriously is that you're collecting a bunch of information, and then what is it gonna cost us to do anything with it? What you're doing is you're running something over time, watching stuff go back and forth or whatever it is that you're doing. And, 99 times out of 100, it's not going to be anything at all. And time's going to go by and you get your rewind thing and it goes for another 12 days and nothing happens. What's that doing for us?
yeah. So one of the things, though, I think for the airport, I believe in leaving it there. This is my only reason for doing that. is that we use the AAC a lot for the airport. And so we would really turn to the AAC to, get some feedback on, if we do that, what type of unit would we get? Because we still have some issues with regard to noise at the airport.
But we shouldn't have.
There's nothing that the port can do about anything. I'm telling you right now. I mean, I went through that chart that the AAC subcommittee came up with, and the port really isn't in the middle of that. The port is responsible for the land around their airport, but as soon as you get in the area, you're not responsible for anybody. Okay, I mean, you can't do anything to anybody at all as a port.
It's so quieted down now anyway from what it was, with the yellow airplanes gone and things changed. I think we've got to really be careful. I mean, there's no way all those aircoming planes could be non-existent in sound. I mean, we got neighbors who like no sound at all, I guess. I'd like no sound on the highway.
She's the one within about 300 yards of the west end of the runway, right? And I'm the one that's on the half mile from the east end of the runway where everybody comes out.
We just gotta change the traffic to where it goes up the east.
Well, there's no way to make it any different. I'm not whining about the traffic at all. It's just that we need to be real careful. Right now, the noise mostly is being made by the guys that are pulling gliders. And the glider tug is a different plane than it was, right? So I mean, I think what we're doing is we get jammed up into a great big change over something that really is.
I mean, I worry about the airport because everybody says, it always costs us money, costs us money. Then we're thinking about, I know we're talking about a new hangar because we can start making money, but we gotta be careful of what that hangar is. It's gotta be the right kind of hangar, the right kind of thing to make money. We've got that money budgeted, but is it really gonna do what you want it to do for the to help offset the airport? I worry about it. I just want us to be smart about it. Same thing with 60,000. That's a lot of money. That means we got another year, the airport doesn't break even, and everybody bitches about the airport.
Yeah. No,
So I worry about
yeah.
spending money where we don't need to, if it's gonna make it like it's one more year that it costs us money again.
Well,
Anyway, that's me. It's gotta make sense, and so if we build a hangar, that's a lot of money for a hangar. So it's the right kind of hangar that could be leased out to businesses, that's great, but
It's a considerable.
it's gonna
amount of
take a
money.
heck
We're
of a
building
business
another one
to
out
pay.
there right now, right? And we built 4, so we know about building hangars, what building commercial hangars cost out there. And
And costs have gone
I
up.
don't see any way you can have somebody that can pay for what you're gonna have in that hangar. That wants to pay that much for rent for it, but, somebody that thought about it more than me, maybe figured differently.
Well, if you got
Anyway.
somebody doing a study on it, that's great. I think that's super. If there's somebody out there and the study's gonna get done, I think we just gotta make sure that it makes sense, is all.
Okay. Any other comments on the points that Judy and John have brought up?
The one thing that I would say about the software or the hardware and software that has been talked about is, I think it would really help the port when someone calls in to complain about the noise and they're tracking how many planes are going through, and they give us a number of what they say they're seeing. It would be great if we had a system that was able to then say, that's correct, and so obviously it's an issue, or that isn't correct, and here's our data. So
We're not the airport police, that's the problem. The port is not the airport police. I mean, as soon as an airplane gets off the ground, you got nothing to say about it as the port. Okay, I mean, it sounds right, and stuff occurs at the airport, but you have no dog in that fight. You really don't. As a port, you have no dog in that fight. If you want to be mad about noise, you call the feds. And of course, they're going to tell you that unless they broke some pretty high noise level deals or got really low on the ground, and somehow you can prove that, that's something. But if you're looking at somebody flying low over your house, it's got nothing to do with
I
or
think
the
the
airport.
signs
So-
have gone up. I think the port has gone over backwards, and everybody trying to reduce the noise, throttling back, the signs are there. I think people have been really good. I mean, I think the noise level's really down.
Should have been here in the 80s and 90s.
In the old days.
Fred?
Hey, you ever heard of spray?
Yeah, Michael, what you got?
Well, I just wanted to say it's been a little hard to track that conversation, but it seems to come down to whether the budget committee supports the idea of having this as a line item with the caveat that it would need to be carefully considered and vetted before any action is taken. And that, of course, would be directed by the commission, or whether that line item is moved out, zeroed out.
Correct. That's how I view it too.
So that's a question for the budget committee then.
Yeah, so that's why I said that. So what's open, so these are some of the items we're going through to finalize the budget, would be whether to leave it in or have a note, to leave it in and have a note that says, before this is considered, have the, let it go through deliberation with the AAC and so forth, or take it out completely. So,
Guys, I'd be happy to leave it in.
But
With
we
a
gotta talk
serious
about
note
it.
there
Right?
that you really have to need it, and you have to have good reasons for it that are port reasons that affect port. And not just because you want to listen to airplanes going over.
all right. I will write that down.
And we're gonna have a port AAC meeting in 2 days. So that'll probably come up again.
I would really support that, John, for the AAC to weigh in on that and give the commission some advice. Leave it in there for today's purposes, but
Yeah. Well,
yeah, let's make sure we're deliberate in what we do with this thing.
I just don't think that you're liable. And
Thank
you can get into a big hole trying to stop something that you really don't have a way of affecting at all.
All right. So what we have in the budget to be approved by you guys, the rigging area, right, to change from 20,000 to 40,000 with a $30,000 grant. Moving the ag gas appropriation into this year budget of 225,000. Moving 250,000 from Hanel over to the bridge for the load analysis, up that load analysis amount from 255. And then leaving the $60,000 of the airport for plane tracking, but with a note related to that cell or to that amount. And clean up the errors, and then also have it put the tenant land leases in. In the budget, we do have a 5% or not 5 cent, I believe. I wrote like cent, but it's 5 cent breeze by increase and a 25 cent cash increase for the tolls. I have a 6% increase for T-hangers rates. And I think I do have, I have a 2.5% increase for the marina. Now, that's in the budget. That's not to say that's what will actually happen, but that's in the budget. So is everyone okay with that? Then I'll leave it over to John to.
Is that your package?
That's our package.
All right.
That's
Is
what it
everybody-
is.
Okay, the question.
Fred, I've got one other thing about that Travel Oregon grant for the rigging areas. It had 30,000 for the rigging areas and 10,000 for signage and sanitation on the waterfront. So we have 10,000 on the revenue side for waterfront.
I think I had the 10,000.
Okay,
I had the 10,000, but I didn't have this. I had 20,000 for rigging. I think this all well, anyways. So I think I'll double check that.
okay.
Question, is there money to cover all this?
Yes.
You
Okay,
think there
I
is.
just like to know that there's enough money.
Yeah,
If
there
we
is
pass
money.
this budget, you have money, you're
That's
gonna
right.
budget it.
That's
Okay.
right. We won't have to go to Wayne.
All right.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so
Oh, yeah, I'll entertain a motion by someone that would like to move that we approve that package, whichever one of our, what are we calling ourselves now?
oh,
Budgeteers, maybe?
before you do that, oh, I have one more thing, sorry. Someone has to make a motion to approve the property tax levy at the rate of 0.0332 per thousand of assessed value. So someone has to read that. So
Okay, I move that we approve the
property tax,
property tax of 0.0332 per thousand.
okay. That's a separate motion. Someone has to make that. Someone has to approve that.
Okay, I
Must be a
just-
second out there in the line.
I'll second that.
Okay,
Okay.
discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Raise your hand, do whatever, yeah, okay. Anybody opposed?
No opposed? Okay.
David almost didn't get his hand up.
All right. Now you can make the motion of the approved budget based on.
Okay, so that multi-item budget motion that whichever one of our folks wants to make, would please do that, then we can be on down the road here.
I'll move that we approve the proposed FY 21-22 budget as with the modifications that have been proposed by staff.
Thank you. Second,
I second it. Someone else doesn't.
Judy will second it, that'd be fine. All right, then move second to
Discussion.
to do all this. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll just put it up for a vote. All those in favor, nod your heads, raise your hand, say aye, do whatever you need to do.
Aye.
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 Perfect. Anybody opposed?
All right.
Yeah, I like this unanimous stuff.
No, pretty good. As long as Fred says we got the money, that's good.
All right. I think we're done. You get to.
Okay, so. Okay, we added and subtracted all that. Okay, we did.
You can adjourn.
Okay, so. We'll adjourn. I can move to adjourn, but doesn't need a second. Who cares?
I don't know. I don't know anything about second on adjourn.
Oh, you don't need a second. I'm motion to adjourn, but I can't make it, so somebody else probably got it.
I move it, we adjourn.
All right. Judy. All
We're
right.
adjourned.
Thank you, guys. This has been very helpful.
Good job, Fred. Holy cow. It's a lot to put
Yeah,
together.
that was really good.
Super. Thanks, everybody.
Hey,
Thank you.
Can I interrupt briefly? Commissioners, we need to have a short, regular commission meeting after the budget committee is over.
Can we get a 5-minute break?
It'll be a 10-minute meeting, so.
Okay.
That's 15 minutes of torture.
Good.
Yeah, okay, budget committee, thank you very much. It's much appreciated.
Guys, thank you very much. Becca,
Yeah, much.
Larry, I appreciate it. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you. Good meeting.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you for using your office now.
I'm sorry, I mean,
Yeah, back to Land of Walking again. There's your pen, Don.
if we didn't have that and in there, we wouldn't all come down here, but.
Oh, this is
All right,
great.
well, thank you very much. I appreciate
Hey, I
it.
saw you driving the truck today.
Oh, here's-
What'd you do?
Oh, we got you way back. You're just-
Oh, I'm sorry. It got to be so darn dark in everybody's car that I find myself not looking, but when I was younger, I used to know everybody that went by. Yeah,
Thanks
their
for
name and what
getting
they're
it
talking.
set up maybe in here. I got a little confused on the
Oh,
whole
no problem.
process.
It worked out real well.
Thank you, sir. You gonna get your next shot real quick?
Well,
Oh, you're done.
Hey, thanks.
Thank you, sir.
So President Effort, if you could just open the regular commission meeting.
Okay, we've adjourned from the budget committee. I'll bring us into session for a regular Port Commission meeting, 4:17 PM.
So commissioners, I thought it was important just to give you a quick rundown of some of the current issues we're facing. This will just be very brief and I'll go fast, but if you have questions, just let me know. We're focused on the event site right now in terms of porta potties and dumpsters, hand washing stations. So we now have contracted with Bishop to start that work or start that those facilities that have been in place. We'll look at each of the other portions of the waterfront as the next days and weeks go by to see if we need to plus up the facilities at those locations. But the event site is getting busier. We felt it was important to get those facilities in. The American Harmony showed up today, first cruise ship of the year, unexpected. We thought the first one was going to be on the 6th. And that, at least I saw it for the first time this morning. They've been working with Hood River County to determine what their appropriate capacity is, carrying capacity relative to the risk level in the county. I wanted to brief you all on what we're doing in terms of the ARPA funding that's flowing to the states. This is moving quickly and the process is still somewhat unfolding and changing as we go. We met with Senator Thompson this morning. Again, currently what they've done is they've allocated $4 million to each state senator and $2 million to each state representative that those elected officials can utilize. They have to meet federal guidelines, but basically utilize in their districts the way that they choose to. What Senator Thompson was most interested in this morning is helping with some contribution towards the commercial hangar at the airport. And the round number that we discussed with him was about $500,000 for that. There may be a possibility that he has additional funding available, and it could either accrue to that project or it could potentially accrue to, say, the fill project at the Lower Mill or Anchor Way. But he seems fairly fixed on the number. He'd like to help economic development projects, and the commercial hangar is one that he was most interested in. We meet with Representative Williams tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. It's less clear what her interests are. Remember, she has a lower amount, $2 million, a big district. So it's not certain what, if anything, that she would be interested in supporting, but there are some indications that she may be most interested in the Anchor Way Lot 1, particularly because of the connection to the transit. And then on the federal level, the Senators Wyden and Merkley have sort of a combined forum, and the deadline for that is, help me out, Genevieve, next Friday, a week from this Friday.
The 14th, yep.
So that will require filling out the form, adding some detail, and again, that's not, that would be focused likely on Lot 1, although that's, there's still some question about what his or their criteria are. So I want to pause there if there are any questions. These ARPA funding request is moving quickly. What I've addressed here is something separate from the bridge project. There is a Friday hearing for the Capital Construction Committee, and Kevin's working on putting together testimony from Commissioner Everett and potentially Commissioner Benton. And I understand that Representative Williams will also be providing testimony. That's in support of the $5 million ask for the bridge, and that's associated with lottery funding. So different than the ARPA funding that these other economic development projects are going through. Any questions about that? Does that seem like the right direction? We're trying to understand where our state representatives are coming from in terms of what their interests are and what they may be willing to support, and align those with what the port's near-term priorities are. On the bridge, it was a tough go with traffic, but the lift span M&E testing was concluded last week. A lot of tough work. First time we had eyes, arm's reach of on the lift span and arm reach of the connection points for the cables. The only concern, and you'll hear about it more in a month or so when a report is prepared, but the only concern was one of the cables at the northeast corner, where it's located close to the sheave, or the sheave where when the bridge lift is down, that one had some fraying on it and one of the sub bundles of the cable and some deformation in the cable itself. Unclear as to how that deformation occurred, but certainly if there's a bit of a cable that's broken, a substrand as it were, that's a concern. The engineers felt that that simply needs to be monitored. They didn't see anything that was immediately actionable on that, but it was a concern, and we need to be able monitoring that of 6 months to every 12 months. But mostly good news on that. On the waterfront, well, we talked about that. Parking enforcement on the waterfront begins the 15th of this month. So we'll have staff that are doing parking enforcement. On the strategic plan, there's a meeting, 2 meetings on Thursday, one in the morning with the Marina Committee to talk about the look ahead 5-6 years on the marina, and that's connected to our overall strategic plan update. And then in the afternoon, there's a meeting of the AEC at 4 o'clock up at WAM. Same thing, look ahead, consider the future activities, vision, objectives, stakeholders, and all that at the airport. I will say that Mike Davis, who was hired, as you know, as a consultant to help out, think about the airport with us, he will be there and he will describe what he's come up with in terms of recommendations. It's something that Commissioner Strike was real interested in. And under property, we talked about the Travel Oregon grant. That's great work to Genevieve, Daryl, and John putting that together. We did receive the $100,000 check, which was the tenant reimbursement for Freem. In this case, that check arrived, and that will require an amendment to their lease. But that will alleviate some of the pressure on and the repayment schedule for Freem. I wanted to let you know that I executed a short-term lease with Cardinal Glass for the last open lot or available lot at the Lower Mill. It only goes through the end of October, so it's within my purview to sign without commission approval because it's less than 6 months. They have a construction project going on, and Dave Windsor called and they really needed some staging area quick for their contractor. So they're paying the same rate as Y East and Rapid Ready Mix for a short-term lease. There was interest in there up there from a packing house for some bin storage, and that's, as it turned out, not needed now, but it could be needed next year. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is that it doesn't seem to be a significant issue when it was at first, but there was a property owner that's adjacent to the airport on the north side and adjacent to the wetland mitigation area that was just completed at great cost as part of the North Ramp project, cut a number of trees to create a view corridor, and some of those trees were on port property. We had the property line flagged today. I haven't seen where the cutting occurred relative to the property line, but the surveyor said that there were several trees that were cut down on port property. They're cottonwoods. It's in a lowland wetland area. The trees don't have significant value, but it was certainly a surprise to the engineering team when they were up there to do their final inspection. So I don't think there's anything to do about that. I will probably communicate with that property owner once I understand more about what they did relative to the port property. That's it. Wanted to give you an update on some things and make sure you're aware, because we won't be meeting for a couple weeks now. Any questions?
Yeah, Michael, do you know if is Cardinal doing an expansion or just, they're going to hire some more folks? Do you know?
I don't know. I will find out and be able to report back.
That's okay. Just wondered. Thanks.
Okay, that's all I had.
In that case, we're adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.